Welcome to the Only Dream Big podcast, starring your host, Donnie Bedney. Only Dream Big is a podcast where Donnie will share tips and experiences on different topics, such as acquisition entrepreneurship, human capital, and the future of the workforce. He is the president of PSP Metrics and has been in the assessment and human capital management industry for more than 15 years, with the goal of driving change through people. As your guide on dreaming big, let's hear from the man himself.
Hey, welcome back, everyone. This is the Only Dream Big podcast. I'm your host, Donnie Bedney, and we're bringing yet again another guest that I am so excited to just listen to and learn from. Brandon Bryant is coming to us today. Brandon, thank you so much for being a guest on the pod.
Appreciate you for having me on.
So, we like to just hop in and kind of, start digging into things. And obviously you and I, have been getting to know each other. And I think that your story, is very exciting. And frankly, you've told various versions of it numerous times, I think, probably at this point. But one of the things we like to do is kind of like, can you take folks back? I mean, as you think about your role, and kind of how your life has evolved now, partner at, venture capital firm that's doing some amazing things and investing in a really dope group of people. And I know we'll get a chance to talk about that a little bit today. But even I'll say, your ability to brand and, Wall Street Paper and all the other things that you do. Can you take us back in your life, and you can either take us all the way back to, growing up in, Cleveland, Ohio, or anything else. Did you dream and kind of see yourself in the place that you are today? Then, like, when did that kind of, formulate for you?
Yeah, the quick answer is no. I didn't dream even when I graduated college, that I would be someone who would start his own business, would start his own venture capital fund, would be a content creator, would be all these things. I definitely didn't dream that I would be back home in Cleveland so soon as well. I thought I was going to be back home in Cleveland like 2030, 2035 or something like that.
Sure.
But I think if I'm going to like my earliest years, I was never the tallest or never the strongest or the smartest, but I was someone who thought to myself, like, I would always work harder than every single other person. And I was very charismatic. So my work ethic and my charisma, being personable, playing 3 sports and never being at home, staying out way past my my curfew, if you will, just to like build relationships with people, like those became my skill sets. And then now today, like when I'm working with my business coach every 2 weeks, like we're now putting those out as like, so you've always had a growth mindset. You've never necessarily focused on outputs or results. You've always focused on inputs. And you believe that your inputs, as long as you're doing them right, will always get results or even exceed your expectations. And you have done that time and time again, from when you were in middle school, were you in high school, college, and even professionally now. And so I was like, all right, cool. Like growth mindset is one of my unique superpowers. And then the other one was relationship building and how I can actually not only build relationships and stay top of mind, but how do you turn those relationships into deals or business opportunities or into like investment partners, right? Like LPs, if you will, for folks who would invest in our fund. And so I've been doing this for years. And now I'm starting to fine tune, like, this is what I'm naturally gifted as. And how do right now I'm just like trying to figure out, how do I spend as close as I can to 100% of my time, not being in a zone of excellence, but being in a zone of genius. And so if I were to say, right. So my perspective, I've been rambling around in life, just being a personable guy and always just being a hard worker. But over now, like, my 30 plus years on earth, I'm finally understanding what the gifts that God has given me. And now I'm trying to put myself in a position where I can only focus my time using those gifts in areas that I know that I'm going to exceed expectations and beat out other people without even potentially putting that crazy amount of effort in. And then, you know, those wins, that progress gets you to the place where like, hey, I'm doing things today that people won't do so that I could do things tomorrow that people can't do.
Yeah.
So my whole life, I've been doing those just two things. Whether it be on the basketball court, whether it be in the classroom. Like I was always a guy in the classroom, especially in college. I told you I wasn't the smartest guy, but I was at every office hours because I'm building a relationship with my teacher, because they will give me minimum half a grade higher, if not a full grade higher, because
you're
I came to school with a lunch pail and a hard hat on, right? Going to work. And it worked. Like all the classes that I was pretty much like C minus in, I got a B minus or a B plus.
Wow.
Not because of my actual grades in the class, not on merits, if you will, but on time and effort. And then that went into being a banker, that went into being a content creator, and then that's now going into being a VC, which is like the most ambiguous job ever created. One is being kind of being an entrepreneur, but it was what is even more ambiguous is investing in entrepreneurs. Like you can't get more. You just not knowing which way is up or down and which way is right. So I'll stop there because I said quite a few things, but that's kind of not my life story in a nutshell, but just like how I've seen success. And now I'm starting to turn that success into like a weapon, like a sword that I'm sharpening every day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and man, rich way to just jumpstart us, you know, for this. There's so many directions we could go, you know, with that. But, you know, it may be something you can unpack a little bit. You know, you talked about, you know, focusing on things, not just that you can, you know, do with excellence, but frankly, that you can operate in at a genius level. Right. And I know one of the things you and I talked about in previous conversations is my belief that, you know, an individual's superpower is actually just being more of themselves. Right. Which is literally what I like you just oozed out like in your own life, like what that truly is. And so can you help folks understand, like, just as they're evaluating their own life, right, and things, you know, how do you differentiate between, you know, the things that you have done maybe throughout your career in excellence, but maybe that may be different than what the things that in which you can operate at a genius level?
The best way that I can think about this is it's really through time and action. Like you can't figure it out in 1 hour. You can't just like for the next 60 minutes. You can't figure it out in a year. It really takes time and it takes action. One of my favorite guys that I follow, I'm a big crypto Web3 guy and the founder of Coinbase, Bryant always talks. He always gives advice at the end of most of his podcasts. People always ask him, what advice would you give to people getting into this new technology, this new space where they can find a way to add value? And he said, do anything. He's literally like, do anything. When you make an action, there's always a reaction. You always get information and create processes to take in that data to make data-driven decisions, right? So I took that on my own self through like college, really. When I went into college, I was pre-med. I took some biology classes, crushed it, hit it out the park, took a chemistry class, got hit right on the chin. I was no longer in pre-med well after my first semester. Then I had the idea of like, hey, why don't I get into healthcare administration, business of healthcare? All right. I don't know if I can go to med school for 4+ years afterwards. Wanted to be an anesthesiologist, which takes another like 4 to 6 years. I'm like, whew. So why don't I get into the business side? What happens is I take an economics class while I'm going on that business side, and I'm in like macroeconomics, and I learned about, and then also did micro. I was like, wow, I've been doing this stuff every day because to pay for my rent while I'm in college, I'm a power seller on eBay. I'm selling like iPhones, I'm selling Xboxes. I sold my old saxophone. I was selling clothes to just make ends meet, but I'm taking pictures the right way. I'm copy and pasting and downloading and writing whimsically the captions, right? Like I'm writing the information, the descriptions, all these different things. I'm putting it up mainly around holiday opportunities to catch like not sales with people who have high intent. These are all things you do in economics. And so I just became so enthralled in that class and did so well that they sent a letter home for me to potentially major in it.
Wow.
And I laughed. My mom's like, "You got a letter to major in economics?" I was like, "Oh my God, that's weird. I don't know why." And then I spent that summer, like I was home for the summer. I spent that summer realizing that why would I ever focus on such a small sliver of business only in the medical space where I could do business for anything?
Sure.
And then after I went back to school and I ended up transferring to Ohio State, I went to business organizations and stuff like that. And I was blown away by the intellect of these young people who are like working at Goldman Sachs, working at McKinsey, working at all these top firms.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized, okay, cool, like I can do this. And what's the hardest thing I can do is become an investment banker. Became an investment banker, realized that wasn't for me. And like I just kept stepping and stepping, got into content creation space, realized there was a ceiling in the content creation space. And then I realized like marketing and branding and business are really big in venture capital. And there is no ceiling in venture capital. Once you invest in companies, like they can go on honestly forever. You can just hold those shares. So like honestly, for me, I think it takes you to one, like be active, two, have these processes to take in the data and just understand, take inventory. And then three, it takes discipline to actually change your behavior. I think I'll end on this piece. Like you are crazy if you think you're going to do the same things and get the same outcomes. That is the definition of insanity.
Absolutely.
So for me, I always have this thing. I'd rather be right than consistent. People want to be consistent for consistence sake. And you consistently taking L's. And I'm like, I'd rather be right and take dubs and be able to kind of change and evolve over time. And you know, partner with people, learn from other folks, and be a student of the game, and make it further. And I think humans in general, we don't want to change. So I would say be flexible to change, be flexible, be like a ferocious reader and learner. Take inventory of yourself. So that means like meditation, that means evaluating yourself, but that also means like listening to what other people think, not necessarily taking that at full face value, but taking in information from other folks and understanding where you sit. And then that last piece, what were the skill sets and the places where you felt like you were in flow, where it was almost you were created to do these things during that entire process of those like, you know, 1 to 5 years of doing all this stuff in different, and you're going to be doing it in different, different places in your life. So I'd say like those are ways that I personally found extremely helpful. And now every time I'm taking on a new challenge, I go right back to that like ground level of like, okay, cool. I am better than no one. I know more than no one. So let me research, let me trial and error, let me reach out to experts, and let me be a go-getter, and let me like learn from my experience, and let me continue to build. And a lot of times I just build in public, right? Like that's what a lot of folks do these days. And when you build in public, you start to find like-minded people who help you catapult and like go the fast way or see around corners to get from A to B. So that was the other thing. Like find your tribe. That's going to be huge for you. If you don't find your tribe, it's going to be crazy.
Well, this is a, once again, so many nuggets right in there. But I'm going to use this time to actually pivot as you talked about kind of that last piece, right? And so part of what we talk about always is only dreaming big, but the other aspect is driving change through people, right? And you referenced people in multiple ways, just as you closed out that thought, right? You know, one, in finding your tribe, you know, but also as you're building in public and, you know, attracting those kind of people. I know that you know, you and your partners and the amazing things that you guys are doing, and companies, you know, and entrepreneurs that you guys are backing at Harlem Capital are close, right? but it appears, just as I'm continuing to get to know you, that you have an amazing or very interesting circle, of people that you have attracted, over the years. Can you talk a little bit about, the importance, one from like a work perspective of, working with people, not only that you respect, right, that are smart, that are hardworking, I'm sure share values,
Mm-hmm.
but how critical that has been, once you made that decision, to kind of choose the people, if you will, that you get to go to war with, as opposed to simply kind of, going the IB route, where I'm sure, in a lot of traditional career paths, you don't necessarily get to choose the people that, you get to work with or for or build with, but now you're in a
Yep.
unique position, both on the investor side and with your partners, to kind of select the people you work with and or invest with and grow with.
There's a lot to say here. There's a lot to
Yep.
say. I'll set the foundation, just like a little bit more about my background for folks. So from Cleveland, went to Ohio State for school, studied economics, did investment banking for a while. Actually, while I was in college, I met my business partners for Harlem Capital, and we interned together, and then we worked full time together in
Mm.
investment banking. We had this crazy idea to invest in our community when we lived in Harlem and were roommates. We invested in small business and real estate with personal capital. And then that led us to technology and realizing that that's where
Mm.
generational wealth was going to be created, and that people of color and women were really not taking participating in that space at all. Like,
Mm.
we were getting 4% of the capital that goes into this innovative space, even though that people of color and women represent 70+% of the population, growing to be 80+% by 2040. So we said, wow, like this is a big, hairy, audacious goal that we could
Mhm.
potentially spend our entire lives working on. And we could do good and
Wow.
do well at the same time. So
Mhm.
there was two things there, um, that really helped us. And so we did 6 deals with our personal capital. And
Mhm.
then we rolled that into our first fund, which
Mhm.
was a $40 million fund. And we had some great investors alongside of us. But what we learned during that process, it took us 18 months to raise 40 million. And then for our fund two, which is 134 million, it only took us 6 months to fundraise. Right. And so to your point, like there's people, like how do you treat people and how do you work with people and build relationships are the answer to why it took 18 months for the first time and why it takes six
Mm.
months to 3x the
Yeah.
fund, and why maybe we'll double the fund or 3x it again, and it might take even shorter in the future. And
Sure.
so I think number one, when you work on something like that has an actual mission other than
Mhm.
making money, we always say internally, mission opens up doors that money can't. Right?
Mm.
Like, so like when you're working on a mission and you're doing it, I think at such a high level publicly, you
Mm.
by nature attract other people who think like you. And that's
Mm.
actually the whole purpose of fundraising, or not purpose of fundraising, but how do you win fundraising or how do you win business, is
Mhm.
finding people who already believe in what you believe in.
Ah,
Right?
sure. Yeah. Yeah.
That's how you find great teammates. That's how
Yeah.
you find great business partners, or great people you can do business with.
Sure.
And that's how you find folks who want to invest in the things that you want to do. You don't necessarily try to help them believe what you believe. They
Sure.
already believe it, and you're just
Yeah.
telling them that you're the best person to help them execute that. Right now, on
Sure.
the other side, I think of like building relationships and being with people is you also have to be like a great individual yourself, right?
Yeah.
And I'm a big Jim Rohn guy. Jim Rohn, who was
Mm.
the mentor
No
to Tony
doubt.
Robbins.
Yeah. Mhm.
And my favorite quote from him was, "Work harder on yourself than you do in your job."
Mm. Mhm.
And I think to ever be able to build strong relationships or to attract these like very high level thinking, high executing people,
Mhm.
you have to be one yourself.
No doubt.
Right? And so many people find their self worth, myself was included before, in work,
Mm.
where you worked at, your job, etc. And my opinion is once you start to like be like the best person you can be. So like the best brother, I'm trying to be the best uncle, the best boyfriend, the best dog dad, right? Like I'm trying to be the best listener in my group of friends. I'm trying to be the best storyteller, the best this, the best that. You
Cool.
start to do your life that way, but then every time you work on something professional, it's also excellent.
Mhm.
And I think, in my opinion, most people just want to be around people who are excellent.
Mhm.
Most people want to work with people who are excellent. Most people want to spend their lives and all their time with
Mhm.
people who are just really good at what they do, because they hope one day that they can do that same thing. And
Sure.
so, what I've tried to do and what we try to do at our team is build that internal mantra through our values of like, one of our values is process is religion. One of our
Mhm.
values is over communication. Like we have people who are Black, Latinx, Asian, we have women, we have LGBTQ, all on our team who actually speak about their cultural differences. You would never do that in investment banking. You would never
Mhm.
do that in any other firm, right? So like we have a very flat firm, but even we do that externally, right?
Yeah.
Like we promote and talk about those things. So I think we've attracted great founders, great employees, and great investors
Mhm.
through actually sharpening ourselves first
Mm.
and then putting our community even before at times like making money for everybody.
Yeah.
And we think to ourselves, like, if we can actually put our community first and build that community,
Mm.
then we have the opportunity to participate in the larger pie of
Yeah.
whatever that means from a financial standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, man, so so good. That piece about, not only continuing to sharpen yourself, right, and the importance of, focus. One of the things that I kind of heard from you at this point is just it's almost like a character thing, right? And I define character personally as keeping the promises that you make to yourself, right? And that's
Big,
actually
big
correction.
facts.
So it's like character slash integrity, right? And that's huge, and you hitting on that, but then also that focus on mission and understanding that with focusing on that and the impact that you're going to have, outside of yourself, that will then kind of open up doors. It's just so powerful, man. We will have to have you back
Yes.
because so many things I wanted to unpack today, but no, know that time is not on our side today. And so, just want to thank you for, spending a little bit of time with us, unpacking some aspects of how you've been able to continue to, dream and achieve, and move along. And so just so grateful for you being a guest on the pod. Really, really appreciate you, and we'll figure that out. We will be watching, you. And where can folks find you? Before we get off, where can folks follow you? Where can they find you, etc.
Yeah, if you're on, Instagram or Twitter or any of those things, you can follow me personally at Wall Street Paper. That's my handle. Or you can follow our firm. Our handle is Harlem Capital on
Mhm.
all social media platforms. And then the other thing I wanted to just say, like if I'm leaving with some points, I think the number one point was definitely work harder on yourself than you do on your job. I think that will hit hopefully hard for a lot of folks. But I think the
Mhm.
second thing is, understand your big, hairy, audacious goal. Like, what is
Mm.
the big thing that you want to be remembered for, or that you want to do when it's all said and done? And like,
Mhm.
for example, mine's I want to just own the Cavs. I
Mm.
want to be the guy who crushes it in Cleveland so much so that the city believes that I should be one of the owners of the Cavaliers.
Nice.
But there's so many things that goes to that, right? Like it's such a big hair audacious goal that you could potentially be scared, and there's
Yeah.
no linear way to get there. But
Mhm.
imagine the type of person you'll become
As a
trying
result.
to get
Yep.
there, right?
Mhm.
There's a big Jim Rohn thing.
Woo.
He's like, don't become a millionaire just to become a millionaire. Become a millionaire because of the person you'll become on that journey.
Wow.
And so
Yep.
those two things of like, work hard on yourself and you do your job and have this big, hairy, audacious goal that is obviously bigger than you. You'll obviously have to give so much more value than you're
Mhm.
giving right now to get to there. Like, imagine that type of person that you'll become. And if you are on that
Yeah.
pathway, I usually say you'll never worry about any type of like earning power, because it's going to be there.
Sure.
That's the
Yeah.
least of your worries is earning power when you're going that route, right? Like the other side,
No
you're like,
doubt.
man, like I just really believe in this mission.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's when people get into that place and they really believe in the mission, they start finding their zone of genius. Watch out. They're
Huge.
it's contagious. It's time to level up. And I think in the last piece, and I think that you, Donnie, are working in that. Like I feel like you are one of those folks who really embody that type of thought leadership or that type of discipline. I've been seeing you on social. Like I was like, yeah, I really need to work out because this guy is hitting me with these. So I want to say thank you for having me on, and just wanted to make those few points before I left.
Strong close, man. I will not belabor the point. Really appreciate you all. Hey, this has been the Only Dream Pig podcast, and we'll see you all next week. Peace.